Hi, I'm Ron Lukian. I'm a glassblower in Rawdon, Quebec. Worked with my wife Gail, who paints on my blown glass. I'm an artistic glassblower. I've been doing it for 50 years. I started in 1971. This is my 50th year of blowing glass. I can hardly believe it. First sold it on the street in San Francisco, and then moved back to Quebec in '72. It was a lot of fun. I was young, and it was a lot of fun. I had a friend who had just started blowing glass. I went to visit where he was working. He was working in this Shakespearean theater in a high-end mall in Los Gatos, California. And there was a glass studio there that the shopping mall built, and there was 4 glass blowers working out of it. Anyway, my friend David Camner introduced me to glass, and I sold his glass on the street. Neither one of us had a nickel to rub together. He said, you know, we can go up to the city and Girardelli Square, Fisherman's Wharf, Union Square, set up a little table, went to Berkeley on Telegraph Avenue too, big college town. And David would drive me up 80 miles in the morning, and then back 80 miles to Los Gatos. He'd blow glass, I'd sell it. And I had a little card table and a box with about 10 pieces of glass. I was infatuated with the glass. The colors were beautiful, and I would sell them on the street. And people would ask me questions about the glass, and I couldn't really answer them. And they would always ask me, "Is this your work?" And I would say, "No, it's a friend of mine's." And I soon realized that they wanted to buy the piece of glass from the person who made it. So they'd say, "Is this your work?" And I'd say, "Yes." And we did pretty well. It was the month of December, about 3 weeks before Christmas. I think we made a couple $1,000. In 1971, that was a lot of money. You know, people were working for $2,000 a year, $2,500 a year. So I first sold glass. I realized I could sell it. I said to David, let's go to Quebec, where I'd come from. No one's ever seen this there before. You know, we'll do great. We'll do great. Rented a farm on a mountain, and no running water, no electricity. And we moved in February. and built a shop, built a glass studio during the winter. Worked like pack animals, pulling bricks up on a toboggan to the top of the mountain where the farm was. And anyway, started blowing glass in May or June, I think, 1972. And David had been blowing glass for, 6 weeks before that, so he didn't know much. He knew more than me, though. And we worked together, and we taught ourselves how to blow glass. We were in it to make a living, and to make a living from it, because that's how it started. We first sold to the weekenders. That was cottage country, Lac des Saisils. Put a sign down on the highway, and the people would come up the big long road we had up to the house and buy some glass on the weekends, and we'd make a few dollars, and you'd buy more propane and melt some more glass. And David spent that first winter in the winter of 71, 72. He went back to California in the fall. He couldn't believe how cold it was here. Although he's from the Bay Area, it's not beach country, but so then I was there by myself after that, and just hard-headed. I think you have to be stubborn. You know, stubbornness is a good trait sometimes, I think. I had no other way. I didn't really want to work at a regular job. In those days, guys were working for CN and Sun Life, and a clerk in an office, or maybe a factory job. And I don't know, it didn't interest me. So I really struggled hard to be able to make a living from the glass. And then the first show I ever did was the Salon des Métiers d'Art in 1972. I rented a booth, or shared a booth with somebody there. I don't think anybody had seen glass at the salon. Well, I'm sure they hadn't seen any blown glass. That was the first glass in Quebec. I'm sort of proud to say that I was not the first glass blower in Quebec ever, but the first studio glass blower of the modern era in Quebec. You want to come and sit beside me for this one, so they can see the painter? I'd been blowing for glass for 3 years before I met Gail. That's a story unto itself. I met Gail on a blind date. She was working at Burke's. I was living in Margaret's near St. Adele. And I picked her up at a bus station in St. Adèle on a Friday night. She took the bus up, and we were set up by friends, you know. Yeah. We dated that winter, and then we went camping in Gaspé that summer, and we've been together ever since. Boy, she painted this vase. I was impressed. And I said, oh, we got to take this further now. So now we want to paint on glass. Well, that's not so easy. You have to paint with glass enamels, vitreous enamels. Luckily, I had friends in California. Malcolm Fatzer, boy, I'll always thank him. And Malcolm Fatzer turned us on to a friend of his, this woman in California, that was painting on glass. Gail and I did some research trips down to Corning in New York. They have a wonderful library there, one of the best glass libraries in the world. And we did a lot of research down there. And then we contacted this gal in California. I wish I could remember her name.
Yeah. But Malcolm brought us some enamels and different oils to use, and then through correspondence, through actually letter writing.
And she also sent us a box from California of glass enamels from Germany, yeah, with some mediums, Damar varnish, gum arabic, clove oil, yeah, lavender oil. The first pieces, they're pretty crude. Yeah. They were crude in a lot of ways. The shapes, my shapes were crude, but we managed to sell those pieces. We crushed beer bottles, 7-Up bottles, Coke bottles, smashed them up in this noisy machine, and added stuff to that, like fluxes, like soda ash. You know, the chemistry of glass is pretty involved. Melted real garbage glass, and I managed to be able to blow that stuff. Boy, looking back, it was a real feat. It was hard to make a living. Gail had to work out of the house. Gail got a job out of the house with another crafty friend here in Rawdon that he was doing metal work. I've always said we don't make glass for ourselves. I don't make glass for me. Over the years, you develop. It takes years. It takes decades, really, to develop a craft. You don't do it in 5 years or 10 years. It takes 20, 30. First, you get good. That takes 20 years, 25, maybe 30. Then you can get fast. You know, when Gail was first painting, it was, you know, she props her, she has to hold this piece. You know, she gets cramps in her hands. This has good eye and very steady hands. It takes a real steady hand to do that. I can't imagine. I don't think I could. I have 2 cups of coffee and I could hardly work, you know. Really. But how the hell do you do that? So it was painstaking work, you know, brushstroke. Now you watch Gail go, boy, she goes, do, 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 you know. But that's after 45 years. A piece like this is a drinking glass. I call that a footed tumbler. That could take about 25 minutes. It sounds fast, and it is fast. You have to work the piece quickly. The material lends itself to working quickly. There's no other way. Molten glass, it cools fast. So you have to work it fast. Reheating, blowing, shaping. Yeah, about 25 minutes for a piece like this. Some pieces could take 40 minutes. Some ring holders, I make ring holders that take, 10 or 12 minutes. But most of our pieces are small. They're made relatively quickly. Oh, they're all tough, especially now. Like I was saying, I'm over the hump. It's a physical job, and I'm on the downward slope now. I work small pieces now, not by design. I think just as I got older, if you've got 4 or 5 pounds of glass on the end of a blowpipe, there's a lot of pressure on your wrist, your elbow, especially your shoulder. I've got a rotator cuff that's torn all the time. To me, glass blowing is a job. It's work, and it takes determination, and you've got to be focused, and you got to get up and go to work, just like anybody else. If we have a show coming up, a certain date, I look at how much glass we have, and that gives me inspiration. If we don't have enough, I get out there and I get cracking, get working. Sometimes I get inspiration, like most artists, it cracks me up. I really hate to say this. Most people, when you ask them, most crafties, whatever craft they're doing, where do you get your inspiration? Well, I get it from the nature around us, the nature where I live. And That, I don't know. We live in a nice area, I think, and it's in nature, but I don't get too much inspiration from it, except relaxation and peace and outside of work. If I have a color, sometimes I'll blow a bottle this color or a tumbler this color, just one solid color. So Gail will often ask, what should I paint on that? What should I paint on that? So I'm starting to learn my flowers, but Gail's got all the bird books, all the flower books and all that stuff. And some pieces, like the painted pieces, we make a series of vases and bottles with clouds and seagulls. And that was inspired by, Gail's from the Maritimes, on the beach. I make pieces with, we call them blanks, but they're looks like clouds and blue sky. And I asked Gail just paint seagulls on them in all different soaring positions. And I guess I got that by laying on the beach one day and looking up at that, and I just thought it was beautiful and tried to reproduce that in glass. But that's rare. That's rare. That kind of stuff happens, I think. You can't make it up as you go with glass. You may, in the middle of a piece, say, geez, I messed this one up, I'll turn it into a vase, that sort of thing. But I have an image in my mind, I have a shape in my mind, a definite shape. Most of my pieces are functional. I know what I'm making beforehand, before I start the piece. In fact, you have to set up the shop for it. Glass blowing is very choreographed. A lot of people call glass blowing a form of dance. The glass blowers are dancing around the shop all day. That's what we do. That form of that dance to make a goblet, a wine goblet, or that dance to make a bowl. They're slightly different dances. So you've got to have the tools you need all set up. Each piece is pretty intense. They may take 25 minutes or 40 minutes, but it's very intense, a very intense 25 or 40 minutes. There's no time to think almost. It has to be set up. The shop has to be set up, your tools set up. So I know almost exactly what I'm making before I make it. Molten glass is unlike a lot of other mediums that craft people and artists work with. You can touch your clay, you can get your hands right into that clay. You can sand wood, cut wood, you can put it down and go have lunch and come back and that piece of wood hasn't moved, hasn't changed. Glass, you can't touch your material. It's a big, big problem to overcome when you're learning. You can't touch this stuff. You're dying to, but you can't. So you have to work with all these strange tools, awkward tools in the beginning. It's very difficult in the beginning and frustrating. So it takes years of practice with these tools to build in some muscle memory, I guess. Now, after 50 years, it's just second nature. I don't even think about not being able to touch it. You can reach us if you want to get in touch with us. We don't have a point de vente or a point of sale. We don't have a boutique where we live here in Rawdon, but visitors are always welcome to come. Just don't expect to see a nice high-end boutique. If you Google Lukian Glass Studios, you'll get some images and things like that. We don't have a website. I'm sort of ashamed to say it. I've been working on it for 15 years. It's under construction. We're not famous, but we're sort of known in our small community of glass artists, for sure, and in the wider craft world in Canada, really. You have to tell people your story, because that's a part of it. I always believe that most sales are impulse sales. If we're doing a retail show, and you sell a piece to someone, we talk. You have to talk with the person. As we're talking, I'll tell the story that I just told about meeting Gail. They buy a painted piece, let's say. They had no intention. When they got up that morning, they had no idea they were going to buy a piece of painted glass. But boy, they buy the piece. So what did they do when they get home? They go and they're sitting with their loved ones, their family, and they say, I met this glass blowing couple today. He blows the glass, she paints on it. You won't believe it. And look what I bought. The story is a big part of it. And the piece becomes the proof. The story's true. Look, the story's true. Look what I bought. We don't think we're special, really. It's what we do. And what you do is pretty special. You know, you have your own craft, your own talent. Everybody's got their own, chacun a son métier, you know, that old expression. And I like Gail and I love getting our customers' stories. I always ask our customers, you know, we've been doing one of a kind in Toronto since 1976. That's a long time. So you build up friendships. You build up a good customer that buys almost every year, and then you get to know them, and you get to know their children. And we've been doing it so long that we're into the second generation now. The kids are buying our glass. My favorite question in the booth is, after a while, I say, "Okay, you know what we do. What do you do?" And it's a lot of interesting people out there, boy, a lot.